No mai haere mai, and welcome to Cultic, the podcast where we talk about coercion, control, and all things cultish. I'm Dr. Caroline Ansley. I'm a medical doctor. As a child, I lived at the Centrepoint community in notorious Cultic, New Zealand, and now I run a website that advocates for the former children of the community.
I'm Liz Gregory, and I run the Glory of Our Leavers Support Trust, and I'm privileged to walk alongside people after leaving this group as they embark on their new lives.
And I'm Lindy Jacob. I'm a former member of the Exclusive Brethren, and I'm part of the Olive Leaf Network, a new initiative in Aotearoa to support leavers of high-demand religious groups. Come with us as we unpack the cult playbook. We'll be talking to experts and leavers of coercively controlling groups, and we will call for Kiwis to cult-proof their lives.
Come with us as we traverse the cultiverse.
A warning, this podcast contains references to subjects and discussions which may be difficult for some people to hear. Please take care of yourselves and your whānau when listening. Welcome to Cultic. It's fantastic to be back in the studio with Caz and Liz. Hello.
Hello.
So today we are going to be talking about what it's like to be trying to relate to people inside a culty group when you are a former member yourself. So in our last episode, we talked with Renee Spencer, a mother whose child was recruited into a cult-like group. And the focus of that episode was what it's like to be someone who's never been part of a culty group or who isn't part of one, but who has a loved one recruited in. And the complexities of trying to continue to maintain connection with that person who's joined a group while you're on the outside. So today's conversation is going to be similar. There's a lot of overlap, but we're trying to talk about what it's like to be a former member who carries all those knowledge and relationships and experiences, who's now on the outside, but who is trying to relate oftentimes with multiple family members or friends or community members who are still completely on the inside of the culty group. So same but different.
And it's same but different because the former member is also grieving a loss of those relationships. They are feeling the grief intensely, and when they come out, they are then trying to, navigate wanting that person's love and acceptance again because they've made a decision to leave. Whereas in the mother situation, the mother is grieving intensely rather than the cult member. The cult member thinks they're moving ahead with their lives, and in order to do that in this new cult, they need to cut off their family. So in this way, it's kind of like the reversal.
It is the reverse. I think, both sides still, I think they do carry their griefs. Like we do know that those who cut people off, who practice shunning, that they do carry their own forms of grief. But you're right, there's something there about who's chosen to do something and who hasn't and that kind of thing, yeah.
Maybe some more insight. You might not have as much insight into the fact that you're grieving or a space to recognise that it is grieving if you're inside the group and you've had to cut off your loved one.
Yes.
There's no space to look into that.
It could be that because you're being taught that you're doing this for the greater good. And,
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you're the child in the cult and your mum's trying to reach you, you're not probably thinking that much about that. So, it's different.
So in that episode, I think at the start we talked about how one of the first questions to ask is how big is the divide? What is the kind of characteristics of the group that the former member has left? Do they practice, like a really strict form of shunning, like in the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, which I was from? It was practices a very strict form of shunning. And, for example, growing up, we were taught that if you were to see a former member in the street, you would not so much as even wave at them, and you should cross the street to avoid them, let alone engage in any contact, that you're supposed to treat them people as if they have died. And so, all photographs are removed of you from the family home. You're not meant to have any visits or even letters or email communication, that kind of thing, let alone, sharing a meal or being allowed at funerals or birthdays or weddings or anything like that. So it's like a strict insider-outsider boundary, a very big divide, whereas we discussed that for some people, there's a softer...
the edges aren't so strict. And in fact, I also think of this over time as well. Like, for instance, if a group is closed down.
Like Centrepoint.
Yeah, but the people who were true believers still are believers.
On the inside.
On the inside, yeah. And or a group that never had really strict edges, and maybe they're still kind of they're still holders to the philosophy of the group. Like, we had a fantastic interview with Gina Catena back in, I can't remember what number the episode was, earlier on, about health and health neglect, and she talked about her mother, how her mother's still very much a practitioner and still believes.
In a group that she had left, her mother had left the group.
Mother was still in the group, or still a practitioner of the beliefs of the group system. The edges aren't as hard.
Okay, so Gina could have communication with her. She could
continue
visit her.
Yep, and she was caregiving for her mother.
In her elderly years.
So,
episode 48 and 49 for those who want to go back.
Yeah, so that's a good example of where the edges and the person who leaves doesn't have to physically, geographically leave. They just more psychologically shift, but they can continue to have some degree of relationships. But there's still some really significant barriers.
Right, so psychologically and mentally there is actually still a really big divide.
Yes, yes, but they can still have a relationship. It's just, or like I said, an example of a group that's finished, but that reparation of relationships not happened, and ideologies are still believed by the true believers,
the devotees of the group.
Yes, and and so
that is complex. That is really complex.
It is. I think even though there's those grey areas, those grey areas exist inside really hard groups too, or a lot of rule breaking actually exists. Because Linda, you were in a group a little bit like Laurevale, where there have been these strict shunning and excommunications that occur, but your grandma, don't you forget your grandma. Well,
she would, I mean, she had to deceitfully reach out to me, so she didn't internally believe in such strict excommunications, so she would deceitfully hide it from her husband, hide it from the group, but try and reach out to maintain contact with me. So that can happen if you're lucky. You have some people who reach out to you, but often it does involve deceit, which then can, it's hard because it's a compromise of integrity for them that most people don't want to be deceitful.
They feel guilty over it. What if they get caught? So it can limit it, but it gives you hope that this person is not necessarily on the same page as the cult leader and the ideology on everything. Yeah, and so there's an opportunity here to take advantage of openings, for example, that do naturally come, but sometimes you actually have to make those things happen. And I think about that in the Gloriavale context. There's a lot of people having contact with people and are capitalising on crises perhaps, or taking advantage of opportunities that exist, or making them happen. People going in and deliberately, knowing when someone might be working in a particular place and trying to meet them. And so
you have to be so careful with that though, because I'm thinking of some people I know who have tried to do things like that, who have tried to just force a connection to happen, or tried to take the initiative to make a connection happen, and then they've been served with trespass orders or protection orders against them. So it is a challenging dance all the time, assessing whether the current members do actually, is there an opening? Is there a willingness from their side? Because again, if there's not, at the end of the day, you have to respect their autonomy to choose their level of communication that they're comfortable with.
That's right. And a lot of cults will threaten those kind of letters, but not actually have any legal backing to go ahead with them. So they can become complicated issues. But I think the key is maintain contact if you can, positive.
If it's safe for you psychologically.
And it's about connection. And actually, it's not just about, is contact enough? What is it that people are looking for when they make contact? They actually want restored connection.
Yeah, and relationships and maybe some even healing. Gosh, it's a nice idea. The reason this came up for me was in that interview that we had with Theo. And reading her book, Unveiled, Theo came out of Gloriavale, and we interviewed her a couple of episodes back, where she talked about this dance that she did, continuing to return to Gloriavale to try to retain connection with her very large family, her mother in particular, and how it really just threw her whole world into a turmoil each time she tried to do it, even though she'd moved on so much in her life. And then how something shifted with her mum. And it was a beautiful thing that she talked about. Her mum got a phone and she was able to retain some connection or build some connection. And I think there are examples where there is no connection. You get shut down. That's it. You've got to find a way to navigate that and try to keep in contact as you can. But then there is this other connection that forms, but it's still, we talked about in the last episode, the cult may still be there.
Yes.
The cult still may be there.
Their presence is still a part of the relationship.
Yes.
Invisibly.
Whether
but
you
very
want,
tangibly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's that dynamic that is a little bit different for someone who has never been abused by the cult. But if you've been abused by the cult and you have found a way out and you've done that journey and you've gone on to recovery, and particularly if you're born and raised, oh my goodness, the vulnerability of reconnecting with the cult.
Well, you have more motivation than ever to go in and rescue more, perhaps of your family or siblings or friends, but you're actually a more dangerous person to the cult because you know stuff. And there's a reason that cults have gone with the shunning and excommunication concepts. They don't want the information back in.
And the influence. They're worried about outsiders influencing more people away from the group.
Entirely.
So you're a threat. Yeah.
A threat. And I'm shocked at stories that were unfolding around, let's say, John Reddy and other leavers, where us on the outside, we knew intricately what was going on. We knew why they'd been excommunicated. We'd been following it. We know the whole story. And literally, there are people in Gloriavale today who have no idea. And when you talk to them after they've come out about, you do know what actually went on there, don't you? Oh, no. He just, left or got found with a book or this, that and the other. And as you reveal what actually went on, their mouths drop and they say, well, yeah, I believe you because we're now experiencing some of that ourselves. There are a lot of people in these groups who really don't know what has been going on.
And they also can have their character assassinated by the group.
Totally.
That's the other thing.
So that's harder for them. They're actually coming back as a former member, trying to remain connected. They feel like, they need to come back and seek approval and help others to recognise I'm the same person I was. I know I'm being branded as evil and wicked. So they've got a big job to do to restore trust of their loved ones who were in there because they've hurt them as well. Yeah, it's a big ask for a former member to do it, and yet so many of them do, and it has results. And we know that because over the 12 years we've had involvement in Gloriavale, there is one key feature in the success of 300 people leaving over that time. And it's not been just these outsiders who are helping give assistance to people who leave Gloriavale. It has been the leavers' commitment themselves to their families, to helping them find a way out. And now there's just so many more of them. And if you can just multiply it, and often it's in the first few years of their leaving that they're quite motivated to do that. It's an actual activity that they pursue, which is why cults don't like it.
Yeah, that's right. And we talked briefly in the last episode about this kind of category of opposers or apostates, or different groups have got a different terminology to describe former members who do start speaking up and becoming activistic. And that's an extremely common issue that, Renee also faced, of this question of, do I keep quiet about the group and the harms that I know and the valid criticisms I have of the group? Do I keep quiet about them in the hopes that I can maintain some communication, with people still in the group? But then you eventually can start feeling like you are being silenced. I know for me, for many years, my family held out this carrot of, we might see you. I kept saying, I want to see you again. I want to see you again. I was so afraid of the thing happening that I heard others talk about, of not seeing parents until they're grey and or white-haired and elderly, and that the decades have gone past without seeing them. I didn't want that. I kept asking if I could see them. and they kept saying no, or they'd say, take this off the internet, or was it you who spoke to this journalist, because we're not seeing you if you speak to a journalist, or whatever. And then I ended up realising that I'm not part of this group, but they are still silencing me, they're still controlling me, and this how incredibly, that was causing me to compromise on my integrity. But I always felt like it was going to be this toss-up between, do I hold up the voice of truth, the flag of truth, or do I hold up the flag of trying to maintain relationship at the expense of telling the truth? And it's a very personal thing that each person has to go on this journey of what one am I going to go for. And for me, I realised I've already lost relationship with them. It's already I'm already being completely deprived of relationship. So, and it's, this carrot has never been given to me anyway.
So what do I have to lose?
Yeah, what do I have to lose anymore? So that was...
So in some ways, you were freer to use your voice. As you're talking, I'm thinking about so many centre point, second generation children, now adults my age, who still do not have space to tell their stories. And I know this makes no sense. Centre point went under 25 years ago. It's closed. The guru's dead. But actually still there are people of the gurus, Bert Potter's generation, who still shut down the narrative. And I know that, and this was in Anke Richter's book, Cultic, she profiled Centrepoint was one of 3 highly harmful groups that she was writing about. She talked about one of the main people she interviewed, Anke, and how Anke didn't feel she could say anything really until the day that Bert died. Suddenly she had her voice. And it's like there is something, I feel that there's quite a few people of my generation waiting for certain people to die before they can actually more freely and openly talk about what happened to them. And that affects relationships. It affects how you can show up authentically. Can you actually tell your story in your family when half of the family are saying, no, that didn't happen there? Because it wasn't like that.
An elephant in the room when you re-establish family relationships with someone still in the cult. There is a very big elephant in the room.
Physically in the cult, or they're still in the cult mindset when the cult is over and done with, or whether they've drifted away and that they're not really devoted anymore. They're still in the cult mindset.
It's the big third party that we discussed in the last episode, right? Just sitting there, present in the relationship still.
Exactly. And I remember Gina Catena, she might not have said it, we interviewed her a while back, again, 42, 43, something
48,
like that.
49 episode.
She's talking about her mother still relating to her, and how, I can't remember if we said it in the interview or if I've said it to her when I've spoken to her outside of the interview. She's talked to me about she will never leave that group until her mother dies.
Right.
She herself, Gina, cannot fully leave the group until her mother dies, because that relationship keeps her somehow connected to the group.
Yeah, I think that's a key piece, because, for example, I really value Gillie Jenkinson's Walking Free workbook, but that workbook is very much based around people who have a definite leaving journey. For her, she had joined a culty group as an individual and she left it as an individual and was able to rejoin her family and that kind of thing. So there wasn't this ongoing, decades-long, still connection to the group, because for her immediate family and loved ones, to my memory, were no longer involved. Whereas for someone like me, I know that it's highly likely that for the rest of my life I will be continuing to try to navigate what relationships look like with people who are still in the group. People who, despite the years going by, I still deeply care about and love and miss. And so for people in my kind of shoes, you have to anticipate the long haul aspect of the game. I've had to in the past write letters to family members and grandparents to say, I'm anticipating that if you're getting elderly, that at some stage you might get really sick and potentially even die. And I want to make it very clear now that I want to be notified if a family member deceases, and I want the opportunity to view their body to say goodbye, because I have encountered so many stories of people whose loved ones have been dead and buried before the former member was even notified about it. And so I was trying to anticipate that and going, that would be terrible. I would be so upset if that happened, and I'm going to make really sure that you've heard my wishes here, that I'm going to want the opportunity to say goodbye. But it's so many other things, getting married, having children. You're like, each significant life milestone or hurdle that comes up, you're back to this question of, how do I involve my loved ones in the culty group here? Do I send them photos? Do I send them an invite, even though they may not come? I'm in their city next week. Should I go and try and knock on the door, or should I not? I feel like I can never, people say, move on and that kind of thing. And I'm like, when you've still got the majority of your family in a group and you still care about them and love them, you actually can't just completely move on in the sense of cutting them all off and disappearing. No. Well, you can, but to do so is to completely shut down a part of your heart.
So this is a unique born and raised experience.
In particular, around family members.
In particular, but it is
family
such a massive part of it, potentially.
Yes.
Whether you're in a highly controlled group, closed group that shuns, or you're in a group that has more freedom, like the groups I'm talking about, you still continue to have to maintain this with your parents, often, or your siblings.
I would say as well, it can definitely happen with people who have had, who have close relationships with other recruits. Like I do know of people who are adult recruits and who then recruited their siblings.
Yes.
And then they've left the group, but their sibling has stayed on the inside. And so then they're left navigating that.
That's right.
And sometimes it happens with a friendship, and you're deeply committed to that friendship.
Or a spouse. God, you leave,
That's
the
right.
spouse is still in, you have to continue to have
and then you have custody battles.
My goodness.
That was advice we were given from a wonderful man. And he sat around with a bunch of Gloriavale leavers at a conference we went to once. He'd come from overseas, and he said, "This is a war. Don't believe that it's not." And he said to one man, "Do not let them steal your wife and children. They'd thrown him out." He said, "Pursue them. Pursue them." There were about 9 leavers sitting there, most of them men, and some of them were just so motivated after that. And it was like another wave of activity went on in trying to rescue their wives and families. And it's been incredible. Some of it's taken a long time, but there is progress.
Because there's always the choice, which is, I guess, why we're talking about this. It's this, former members usually have this question with them all the time. How assertive do I be? Or do I just passively accept the path that the group is trying to push on me and my members here of just give up, do things our way? And whereas when you're a former member, all power to you to keep resisting the way the group is trying to write the story. Keep trying to resist that. Do look at the long term kind of game plan, and do ask those key questions. Think carefully about what is it that you're trying to do. If you are communicating, being sure about kind of what purpose is it for. Are you trying to persuade, and nearly all of us go through this period of trying to actively persuade or rationalise with, or bring clarity to our family members through logic, and then you eventually realise that it's impossible.
And you were indoctrinated once, and that didn't work on you.
And so for me, I've now settled for just I communicate one-sidedly with my family members a couple of times a year, send them photographs, send them communication, and for me it's just around assuring them again that I still love and care for them. Nice. I've given up trying to persuade them. If they want to, their information is all out there at their fingertips about the group and the realities of it. But so I think those are key questions, is asking former members, what's the purpose of your communication? What are you hoping to achieve? And then I think having realistic expectations is really important too, because in the ideal world, I'm like, I want a mum again, I want a dad again, or whatever. I want my siblings again, but it's like, as long as they're in this group, that's not realistic. So, and I'm just going to get really disappointed again. I used to talk about how it's like loving an electric fence. And actually, if it's an electric fence that keeps giving you terrible shocks every time you reach out, maybe you shouldn't be trying to hug the electric fence. What's just a healthy distance that still achieves your goals,
Yes.
but keeps you safe.
Boundary setting.
Boundary
It's really
setting, Liz,
important.
yes.
I'm seeing some interesting things unfolding at the moment in the Gloriavale sphere, where it used to just be a very hard cut. But now, in order to look good for public appeal, so that they can sit in court cases and say, we have contact with people who
Yes.
live. Young people are allowed to have contact with their parents.
Yes, they're letting it happen.
There might be contact, but it's not with connection, and it might not be healthy contact. And actually, we're seeing manipulative games being played. We're seeing people leaving, but often when they leave, they don't actually tell their parents, and maybe they haven't decided how long they're leaving for. But there's often a door still left open with the young person saying, well, I'm just having some time out or a break. And in that time, the family in Gloriavale, they're playing a dance to keep them lured in, and they might be offering, well, if you come back, we'll let you X. There's game playing. And I think the worst thing I'm seeing in that is the mental distress that's coming when they realise and they know they're being manipulated, and they know they're only doing, some of the parents are even trying to control where their children go after leaving because they're not happy if they're, say, coming down to South Canterbury or, why don't you go here? And if you do, we'll have some more contact with you. But then they're still withholding the children. They're saying, mum and dad can have the siblings, but you're not allowed to know because they're too dangerous. You might influence them. So what I'm seeing is immense amounts of mental distress around the fact that there is increased contact. What I'm seeing with some young ones is they're recognising it, they can see it, it hurts them, and they're actually saying, I'm going to choose to distance myself from my family, which looks like reverse shunning, but it's not.
It's boundary
healthy
boundary setting.
It's actually frankly remarkable that anyone who's grown up in that toxic relationship environment where there is no such thing as boundaries, people's boundaries and sense of identity and self and edges of who they are,
totally
and
enmeshed.
spaces just trampled constantly, and everything is nothing is their own, that these young people could ever have any sense of boundaries and keeping themselves safe and what is not okay. I mean, frankly, if such young people exist, my head goes off to them. They are remarkable.
They are remarkable, and they've got some people around them
who
are assisting them. Some of them have just fallen into some amazing situations where there's so much love and care and practical wisdom, and you have to teach someone who's come out of a cult what it looks like to put up and set a boundary.
It's not mean.
And it's not mean, and other people are doing it, and it might be that's what it's helpful, and you might have to put up limitations. We're going to meet, but we're not going to talk about the cult. We're going to talk about family matters.
In order to preserve the future relationship, which might still be possible.
Yeah, that's such a crucial piece is I made a couple of notes and I put that around, boundary setting, and that should be done with getting advice, getting wise counsel, talking with others, because I think the key thing here is a former member, unlike Renee, the mother who's trying to reach her daughter. Renee had never been part of the group. Whereas when you're a former member, you're not just engaging with family members, you're engaging with family members in a group that has caused you the deepest trauma often that you've experienced in your life. And so you're actually like going back, into a lion's den that has shredded you more than once sometimes already. And so, it does take a huge amount of courage and a lot of caution and care.
Yes.
So doing it with really wise counsel and advice, or the support of a therapist, finding those very tangible things, like if you do agree to meet a family member who's still on the inside, having a third party present, or having a really time-bound thing, or a really key thing, I believe, is meeting in a neutral space, like a cafe or a park, because the second you step onto physical spaces that they own, they're in control, or they can bring in leaders from the group. And so it's coming up with those very practical boundaries to keep yourself safe.
Can I just wind it back a little? We're using the word boundary a lot, and we're also talking to or about people who may never have understood what that term means. And I think we chuck it around a lot.
Okay, so
I think
what does a boundary mean?
What is a boundary in a relationship to someone who's never experienced it before?
The first thing that comes to my mind is knowing where you end and where someone else begins. Where do you begin and end?
Tricky in a cult.
And, totally, because you've been raised to be completely enmeshed.
Yeah, we are all one. Okay, so
It's
how
really
can you...
hard.
I think of it as being your circle.
Yeah.
Your hula hoop around yourself. That's a concept that we can think of as a physical boundary. This is my space.
A fence, a boundary fence. I think of the
yeah.
sheep on one side and the cows on the other.
Yep. Or I think of like my house and my neighbour's house, and how my neighbour has to knock on the door. They can't just waltz in and start using my
Yes.
pots and pans.
That's quite
and
right.
saying what we're having for dinner tonight,
That's
unless I've invited them in. And if they do that and I say nothing, I have said it's okay for you to waltz in and just start, washing your nappies in my kitchen sink.
So that's a key
that's all good.
piece.
Go for it. Is that
I'm
what
only
you're
laughing because we've had the pots and pans and the people waltzing in. And I struggle. I even struggle to say to them, actually, out here normally you'd come and say, do you mind this? And does it suit you? And have you got anything else on tonight?
And recognising it's your house and not anyone's
But
house.
that's the key thing, is things like, what's your voice here? What do you want? That you can say no. You have agency. So even if say there's a metaphorical meeting, going on, telling the former member, if you don't like what the current member or your parent is saying to you, you can say, I'm going to stand up and leave now if you keep talking to me that way. That you have agency and choice, rather than as a cult member you would just have to sit there and take it. But all that takes skill and practice and
I would
support.
suggest that this notion of boundaries and self-agency, that we're chucking around in these really small words real quick, it's a massive, huge
topic.
Years of learning to assert yourself, learning where I finish,
Where
you
safety.
start.
Where your safety is.
But how can you...
safety.
You need to know what safety
You do.
is.
And so this is what can happen in the early years when people leave cults, and I see it with Gloriavale. They don't know what mental safety is, and they often keep throwing themselves back in that lion's den and having the traumatic experiences and being unable to see what's happening. There are different people in there who are still trying to win the approval of their families who they've left behind. They just want them to say, I think you're a Christian out here, so that they can feel approved of. And they go to the ends of the country and the earth. Mm-hmm. We've got it happening.
And if you've been taught that suffering is your path to spiritual enlightenment or whatever the ideology is, then what you're feeling inside yourself about psychological distress obviously is to be ignored. Yes. So that's why when you're throwing yourself repeatedly at these people and they're harming you, well, we don't listen to that. We don't say, no, enough is enough.
No.
I deserve better.
No.
Like everything about what your worldview has been shaped by and your your sense of self has been shaped by is the very opposite of healthy boundary setting, which is the key to good, healthy relationships. So, I don't want to make this like a huge thing, but I'm just highlighting the challenge.
Very much so.
If you have been out of the group for
support.
6 months or 12 months and you're trying to maintain or rebuild or reconnect with
and want approval and want their love and their care.
The chances of you just getting sucked right back in a mesh, maybe not back into the group, but sucked back into the toxic interactions that are so destructive to your well-being. Yep. It's like quite high.
It's cruel to watch it. You can see it on people's faces.
Yeah, so there's something here about relating to people still in the group, if you have come out of the group. First, I mean, I can't advise, and I haven't gone through this, but as a health practitioner, I would say you must be safe yourself first. Your sense of who you are, your edges, you might not always get that option, but I would put in a plug here for
protecting yourself,
making sure your sense of self, your safety, your ability to hold who you are. I talked about ballast a couple of episodes back. This idea of where you start and where you finish, being able to stay upright in the wind. You know, like this, as you mentioned earlier, it's a war. It's a war for your soul or your personhood. It's a war for your families. And you have to be strong to do it. And I personally think it's okay to sit back and rest for a bit, to gather your strength and prepare for that.
No, I think that's great advice. And I think each person there's a different pathway for them all. What is it going to look like? It doesn't just depend on the group. It depends on family dynamics, personality
very
dynamics.
individual.
It's very
Yeah.
individual. There's an individual plan, but there is an overall, there's an overall theme that maintaining connection with someone inside a cultic group gives that person in there a better chance, a higher chance of believing that if they ever chose to leave, they could do it, they could succeed, they would have support. It opens an opportunity for information to enter into the group, and we know groups love to shut down information. So I still maintain that the best way forward, if at all safe and possible, is contact and increased contact, and I've seen that be the number one success for people coming out of Gloria Vale. And of course, Gloria Vale is struggling because now there's a cell phone tower in there and they are losing control, and the leaders can't throw people out like they were because there's court cases and they're being watched, and with that lack of control comes opportunity for increased contact. And I find that a very exciting concept.
I think that another piece here is that the desire for communication, it's a really strong part of the grieving process. And so it often is important. It's not just as simple as, sometimes it's not. I agree with you that, in some ways it would be easier if you could maybe just, walk away for 5 years until you were like stronger and more sorted, or 10 years, whatever. But often that desire for communication, it's just such a natural part of the grieving process. It's this deep, profound longing to see your loved ones again. It's in cases where there's been a strict cutting off, I should add. So it's that's just another thing, I guess, of a way to think about it, is that this is part of a grief process that you have to go through, of the forced disconnection, and that doing what you can to try and communicate back, or try and share photographs or whatever it is, or to try and see people, that's often necessary work you have to go through. And even though you might then be rejected or pushed away or have your gifts returned, that part of that is, again, the group establishing their boundaries, them telling you where they're at. And you have to face that full in the face and accept it, even if you don't like it. Ultimately, you do have to accept that and work through that grief and loss.
I would also highlight the opposite. You're describing someone who wants to relate to these people and has to come to accept that maybe it's not now, or it's going to be possible in their own terms. I would also like, there are people still in the cult mindset, whether they're still in the cult or out of the group, and that their thinking still continues, who will never be safe. They will never be safe for their children, for their former spouse, for whoever it is. And I have met a lot of people for whom the only conclusion they have had to sadly come to is that the best and the safest thing for them and their children is to never have contact with this person again.
Yes, that's such an important thing.
And it's okay.
Yes.
It is okay.
Yeah.
Your job is also to protect yourself and your dependents.
And I think that's part of what I mean by the grieving process thing as well. It's almost like...
It's a journey.
Yeah, you keep hoping and longing for this mystical thing of a parent, or the love and affirmation of a mother or a father. And yet sometimes
or a sibling.
Yeah, sometimes you need to go through that process of trying to reach out, and then that person making it very clear to you that they're unsafe, they reject you, they're never going to accept you on your terms. And you kind of almost have to hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were, sometimes several times before you finally accept it and go, you will never be safe, you do not want me in your life. And then
you're going to continue to believe these harmful things that put me at risk repeatedly over time, because it's not just difference in ideology. Some of the beliefs are literally harmful.
Yeah, actually harmful. Yeah.
Yeah, and they continue to harm you and put you at risk.
Every time you reach out.
I know people who have to keep their children away from sexual perpetrators who have never seen that as a problem.
That's I've got a couple of thoughts there. One is, what is it that you do when you finally do start having contact? That you've then got a choice to make. What is it that I'm going to talk about or share? Am I going for persuasive arguments? What am I doing?
Yes.
And I found something that's been, leavers have told me is quite useful. It's sharing with their family members in there a story of great distress that occurred to them in the group and saying, I'm not sure if you ever realised this, but this occurred to me whilst in the group. So it's actually opening their eyes up to the harm the group has caused you. You know, I'm sharing from my heart, and it's very difficult for a current cult member to sit with their sister who's come back in to share their heart, to say that didn't happen to you. They're actually faced with reality. And I remember Andre Jackson, he talked about the stages of leaving a cult. He's done some research on it. And
Waking up
the waking up
episodes.
process. And part of the waking up process
This was one of our previous episodes that you can look up.
Yeah, watching as a group harms you or yourself or someone you love. And it's very powerful for someone who's left to go back in and tell their story. Some Gloriavale former members have written letters to family explaining actually what happened. And what it does is it starts to plant a seed. The other side I don't think we've spoken about are people who've left and choose themselves that they've never wanted from the beginning to have contact with the people that are in the group. They're coming out, so they're not feeling the intense desire to remain connected. They feel the intense desire to run the other way.
And to completely cut them
and
off.
completely even pretend like that life never even occurred for them.
Yeah.
And I find that's an interesting...
Well, it's a defence mechanism, isn't it? It's their way of seeking recovery and safety. And, you know, at some stage they will have to deal with those griefs and losses because they are there. But their immediate response, which sometimes goes on for years or decades, is to if, as you said before, kind of reverse shun and go, right, actually, and I don't want to be part of your life either.
And if one of their siblings or family members does come out in years to come, it doesn't mean that one that left years ago wants to have anything to do with the most recent leaver. So it's extremely
so true. And because you can
complex.
feel like strangers, well, often you are. There's decades sometimes that have passed. You're completely different people than when you were kids growing up in the culty group. So it's, very tricky.
Whether you're in a cult or not everyone has the same sense of connectivity to family.
That's right,
Whether it's an instinct or something you learned as a child,
Yeah.
not to feel closeness to family. It's strong in me, it's strong in you, it's strong in you, but it's not strong in everyone.
No, which comes back to that again, that individual choice of different people, and that, so that's why this question is so uniquely tailored to each person has to figure it out themselves. What's the level of communication that you want? What are the purposes of it? And how can you do it in a sustainable way where you keep safe and protected, but you're also, not compromising your integrity if you value family.
Did we talk enough about the purpose of the connection?
Well, I mean, I mentioned that it's good to think about what the purpose is. Are you trying to persuade or not, or are you just trying to maintain some connection?
You just want to reduce your mental distress, and you just need to feel loved and valued, and you feel like you're not being, and you're struggling day to day. So you're
trying to keep an eye on someone who might be harming someone else.
Yeah.
If you're feeling like that, you're not going to get...
That's the difficult thing. Sometimes these groups throw you a bone. But it raises the issue again of the optics, throwing a bone. There's an optics at play here, and how hurtful for a person who's left to realise they're just part of a chess game, and the actual relationship that has been offered to them isn't actually really authentic. That's it's like an injury on an injury. They've already got the injury, things that happen in the group. Then they've got the pain of sort of leaving and all the issues around who am I, and then they're now getting a pain where the connection that's been offered to them,
it's not real.
It's not real. It's for show.
Are you have you got an example there you can give us? Or so you're saying that sometimes some communication is allowed, but that you're saying that sometimes the group has allowed it, or the group leader has allowed it, but it's purely for optics. And I guess a group would only do that if they were coming under pressure. That they're coming under pressure or public scrutiny. or criticism about their behaviours, and so then they say, oh, XYZ.
Lorville have done that now.
Yeah.
So during the court cases, they sort of stood up to everyone and said, oh, we're actually giving power back to the fathers now. You're in charge, of your family. So, and when one of your young ones leaves, it's up to you if you want to keep contact with them. Now, the assumption is that a good loyal member is going to remain with the old story. But they got told they can have contact.
Well, it shifts blame from the group to the parent. Yeah,
it does. That's exactly what it does. But the parent who wants to have contact, because they feel grief when their kids leave, then says, wow, the leader said we could. That's great. I'm going to take him at his word. Knowing
so
full well. Some of them have. Yes, absolutely. And even some of the more diehard ones have.
Reached out to them.
But they love to sit there and go, see? They can't say that we don't have contact. So they're using it in this, it's insidious. It's awful when you see these young ones just caught in the middle of some quite cruel, manipulative
that's
actions.
very confusing.
And
it's very confusing for the former member.
Very. And they're often trying to lure, they still want the young one to go back.
Yes.
And they're holding out relationship if you do as I say. Very difficult. But optics is huge in here.
Yeah, and there's another communication relating thing that can happen sometimes. I'm thinking of children. You always like to think of the children, but sometimes there are those spouses where one has left and one has stayed in, and then children have enforced time with the family members on the inside and enforced time with family members on the outside. Yeah. How incredibly difficult for those children really are walking between two worlds.
Oh. Definitely, and in some of the Gloriavale cases, that has actually led to all of the family moving out. Like, it has been remarkably successful for those who chose to go through court processes, and they've got their wives and kids to this day, most of them.
Wow.
That those men could have sat by, but they chose to take up arms.
It can go the other way, right? Like the children choose to stay in.
I'm not sure if the family court's quite so good to women in that same situation. I'd suggest that women aren't necessarily as listened to when they're in coercively controlling environments where the children are used by the man, in this case backed by the cult, with the power of the cult.
And the money of the cult.
And yes, I've encountered a number of situations where women who have fled with their child, knowing they're unsafe, and have met the wrath of the group, the father, and not recognised in the family court what's happening.
Yes, and actually I'm thinking, it hasn't been 100% successful, but it has assisted and enabled an opening of doors and more communication. But it can get very nasty. And it ends up looking like a fight between the cult and the member that's left. And that feels like you're fighting against the spouse who you actually deeply love and you would like to be restored back with. Exactly. So the fight takes...
So that is a little bit different, actually, because they're not necessarily breaking up, these couples.
No, deep.
Coupling, they love each other, but one feels impelled morally, whatever, to exit the group, and they just... The group has still got their hooks into the wife.
We've seen some amazing things where men have gone back in there deliberately to be back with their wives and just told the leaders, you can't throw me out, I'm not leaving, and they did staged sit-ins and sleepovers and, there have been some remarkable stories in that.
That's taking communication to the extreme level.
My scenario is not such a scenario. It's a scenario with a woman who's actually been violently abused in the group and needs to get her children out.
Yes.
And her husband has got the power, backed by the cult. So that's a real playing out of the patriarchy of those groups and the huge difference between the power between men and women in the groups. It's played out and not recognised in our legal system.
No, I would.
So it's thinking about the vulnerabilities that the former member has, whether it's, a man in a certain situation, woman's in a certain situation. So I guess the key thing there is asking what vulnerabilities you carry, and again, how do you protect yourself with whatever communication you're trying to have back with those on the inside.
Yeah, and there's a lot of challenges with attempting to have the communication. I think the challenges are there's the guilt. There are lots of leavers who feel really guilty that they are freed from the group while loved ones remain trapped in. So there's some of them are driven by perhaps those sort of feelings of guilt, and some of them don't want to have a lot of contact with their family still inside because it's just all too emotionally consuming. And then there's the emotional challenges of how do you handle rejection and disappointment long term, because there's nothing quick about this. There's never a quick exit out of a group. We know people that have left and it was their leaving journey in the mind began 8 years earlier. Really difficult process. And then what about the mixed messages? And I'm thinking about the cognitive dissonance that can be at play in someone, where what you think and believe, it's not matching up with your actions, and then you're seeing that with the person in there. And it's a hotbed of mixed messages when you're relating to someone in there. And the game playing, they can game play. I know this has happened to us. People that we have had connection with and helped have thrown us under the bus with people back in Gloria Vale saying that we aren't nice people and we haven't really helped, and no, we're not friends with them, and have distanced themselves, said they're distancing themselves from us so that they can maintain connection with someone in the group. It's like, if I can have a common enemy, then maybe we'll get a little bit closer together. And we've seen that. And I had someone tell me once, I told a lie about you to this person here because I knew that if I told them the truth, they would close the door on me and hate me forever. But I knew that you would understand if I told you I lied about you. Like, they said it to me. They actually told me what went on in their thought process. And they were right. I it hasn't affected our relationship. I know what was going on. I had some grace to see that they are caught in a really awful web of emotion and confusion when you try to maintain relationship with people inside.
Yeah, I don't. The knots that you're forced to get tied into in order to tread this line with a harmful group and maintaining a relationship. I'm still thinking also of those people who want to have. We did mention it briefly. Want to have nothing more to do with the group, but they cannot separate.
Like
the spouse,
Gina,
and I'm thinking more the spouse who's trying to leave,
right.
or Gina. Yeah, you're right.
That she's never going to be able to leave the group properly until the parent dies.
Yes, and that is such a challenge.
Well, essentially, you're talking about a deep clash of values and beliefs and sometimes practices, all that kind of thing. And whether it's a cultic group or not, when those kinds of things are not shared between people, it endangers relationship, right? And divides family members. And that's essentially, what we're talking about here is how do you maintain relationship with people who think and believe very differently from you, and when is it safe, when is it unsafe?
Or if you don't want to maintain relationships with those people at all costs, but you can't separate.
But you
from
can't.
them.
You're forced. There are
Like
people you are stuck to.
The violent spouse that you cannot leave because of the force of the cult. But that's almost another episode in some ways. But
it is.
Yeah.
I think the key is the patience and persistence, and that you look for the little wins slowly and surely. And I see those walls crumbling inside, the sphere we work in, and it's encouraging. And it just shows that you actually never know what's going on inside someone's head in there, even if they're your sibling and you have left. I've had these experiences sitting around a table saying, how's your sister getting on in there at present? Oh, no, I think they're all right. Oh, actually, I've heard that maybe they might be contemplating leaving. Oh, really? Oh, well, maybe I'll get a message through. And literally 2 weeks later, they're getting picked up. And it just made me think, goodness, if I hadn't actually, had that conversation, that person will still be in Gloria Vale potentially to this day.
Exactly.
So the
People
power...
are always changing.
They're always changing. This person then on the phone not long ago to me said, I wanted to leave a year ago and I didn't really know how to get out. But I did have a family member who was out and we sort of started connecting, but they didn't feel like they could ask that person for help to leave. And I just assumed that the person who had left would be able to mind read their sibling because they've been on that journey themselves. They would know where that person was up to, but actually they didn't, because even in there they were probably quite disconnected in age and in sphere, and when you're in there you're not often sharing your heart with your family. So very slow positive change is what we're looking for.
Another thing that can be worth thinking about is speaking of former members who may not be able to have access to communicate with people on the inside, but they want to be able to be found if need be by someone in the group who's then wanting to leave. Like, I know that at the Olive Leaf Network we've had several different people give us permission to share contact details if a family member ever contacts them. Especially once people move countries, or if they don't have a Facebook or a LinkedIn profile, and they're aware that they might be hard to get hold of, and that, particularly when it's involving children or grandchildren, because, I can send my address or contact number to adults and post it to them or whatever, but sometimes somebody who's now a child, people who are maybe my nieces or nephews, or somebody else has got a grandchild and they're like, I want my grandchildren to be able to contact me one day. They might not be able to. Yeah, so we've got like a sort of a register.
I love that.
And we've been given people's permission. We can pass on the details if that family member ever contacts us.
Amazing.
So that's really good forward thinking that some people have gone through around what are the possible situations in the future that might
Beautiful.
happen.
That's a beautiful idea to end on, this thought that there's hope potentially for some people to be reunited.
And sometimes it takes decades.
Yeah.
Patience, persistence, and a belief that in the end, hopefully, there will be an authentic connecting at some time, and a health and safe future for everyone. Lovely way to end the show, ladies. So thanks to all our listeners, and thanks to Plains Media for their work and assisting us to head out across the airwaves. We'd love for you to join us on our social media platforms, like us, spread the word, connect with us, give us encouraging comments. These things are all helpful, aren't they? And we look forward to joining you again another day. Thanks, everyone.
See you later.
Mā te wā.
If anything in today's episode was difficult or upsetting for you and you would like to talk to somebody, we encourage our New Zealand listeners to free call or text 1737 for support from a trained counsellor. Or you might like to visit the resources section of the Olive Leaf Network website, where you can find a range of organisations and resources that might be able to support you. We would also like to remind you that the views and thoughts and opinions that have been expressed in this program are the speakers alone, and Cult Chat does not necessarily endorse or share them.